Now I would like to welcome our next speakers who will be attending the round table. Perhaps by way of introduction, let us tell you about the purpose of our round table. As we mentioned in the beginning of our conference, the Faculty of Social Sciences of the University of Ljubljana within the Safer Internet project and in cooperation with the social work centers of Slovenia and the Slovenian police forces, just recently, at the end of 2020, published a handbook for professionals of social work centers dealing with violence and abuse of children and minors online. This manual contains many pieces of advice and information that can be of use in dealing with different types of cyberbullying and online abuse of children and minors. The handbook was prepared by many authors and experts from social work centers, the police forces, and experts in the cyber safety. Together with the participants and co-authors, there are many authors, we will be talking about the challenges they are facing in dealing with such cases in practice. And also, they will be talking about how this handbook can be used in practice. I would now like to welcome the participants to the round table, Mrs. Irena Zemljič from the Association of Centers for Social Work of Slovenia. Mrs. Irena, can you hear me? Good afternoon. Yes, I can hear you. Hello, welcome to our conference. The next speaker at the round table is Mrs. Bojana Kračan from the Criminal Police Directorate of the General Police Directorate. Hello. Hi. Welcome. And next speaker is someone we know. This is Mr. Robert Tekavec, also from the Criminal Police Directorate. Welcome once again. Hello. And last but not least, Mr. Marko Puschner from Safe Center. From the University of Ljubljana, the Faculty of Social Sciences. Hello. Hello. Once again, a warm welcome to everyone. I hope you all are well at this virtual roundtable. I really hope that we will be able to meet at a proper table very soon. But until then, let this suffice. So to break the ice, Mrs. Zemljič, I have a question for you. I would like to know what are the challenges that you are facing in social work centers in dealing with cases of cyberbullying and e-abuse of children? And how did this encourage you to collaborate on this handbook? Social work centers, when dealing with children and families in cases of violence, are also facing abuse online. The information on e-abuse can be obtained by the centers from different institutions, from the police forces, schools, courts, and also directly from parents or minors themselves. This field is, of course, a challenge for our expert workers, and this is what encouraged us to take part in the drawing up of this manual or handbook, because we need to place more focus or attention to these problems and raise the sensibility or awareness of the stakeholders in this area. And of course, we were ready and happy to receive the invitation to make this handbook, which will be useful to our expert workers and also other experts in this field. Online abuse is, of course, a challenge of today and tomorrow, which needs to be focused even more in the future. Yes, I agree. These are challenges that keep reappearing, and I do not think that they will end anytime soon. We are facing new challenges, actually. Mrs. Kračan, you're also one of the co-authors of the handbook. So that is why I would like to learn more about your aspect of cooperation. Was this a challenge, the collaboration at the handbook? Were you facing maybe any dilemmas when you were collaborating on the handbook? Can you hear me? Mrs. Kračan? Apologies. I think that she's facing some issues. Maybe I can answer now and she will re-enter Zoom. Okay, I will continue with you, Mr. Tekavec. I would like to know the following. When an action turns to crime, of course, you need to report the police immediately. We've been talking about this for a long time, and we all know about this. However, oftentimes, there are more dilemmas on an earlier point. When you have expert workers at the social work center, when they are doubting whether an action is a crime or not. What do you recommend? Can they use this handbook as a tool in such a case? Thank you for your question. The handbook is good or excellent precisely in such cases because there is a definition when an action is considered a crime, who should you report at that point, and what should you do actually before the police arrives. Yes, we highlight that every sexual abuse crime should be reported. However, it is often wondered when an action is a crime. In such instances, you can use a handbook as a very good tool. Of course, this depends on the age of the child. However, the crime always have to be reported. An action always has to be reported when somebody sends an image of another person where the another person is naked or without clothes and younger than 18. You need to report this to the police. If a social work center is in doubt, they can always call the police. We have an internal agreement that we can call up ourselves amongst each other and ask a colleague for their opinion. So everybody can receive assistance when they need it. So we can talk to all of the stakeholders. When talking about sexual assault at a person younger than 15 years of age, this can take place online, and this is a crime in itself. And this case does not necessarily involve an image. You can also have sexual abuse through texting by describing sexuality and the like. It is also a crime if you have a minor younger than 15 and you show them pornography. And a fairly recent crime is obtaining persons less than 15 years of age for sexual purposes. For example, you have a case when somebody is grooming a child through the internet and the child is younger than 15 and tries to convince the child to meet them in person. And this is followed by concrete actions of the perpetrator who has the purpose of meeting the child and exploiting them in person. Thank you. This is a very good recommendation. In any case, whenever workers at the social work center are in doubt whether to report an action or not, it is good for them to call the police and to find information. Of course, this does not mean that this will also lead to a start of the police proceedings, but the cases need to start with an official report. Thank you. Mr. Puschner, you are the editor of the handbook. You wrote in the handbook that it is also useful to a wider audience, not only to the social work center worker, a social work expert, but also other people who are dealing with children in this field. How did you design this handbook and who is it meant for? Yes, this is a very good question. When we were preparing this handbook, we were doing this in spring in 2019. A co-worker of mine made this initiative because she was at one of your conferences in the past, because she obtained information from a social work that they would need such a handbook because they had difficulty in navigating through cases of e-abuse. But I have to say that the handbook is not only dealing with sexual abuse, but also other topics of violence that are happening to minors. So the first idea was to have some essential information for social work centers. So information on how to act when they are dealing with a minor who has these problems online. So then this was followed by a discussion, and then we were sure that we need to involve the police. So this then kept developing, and we had the basic idea on 10 pages, and then we slowly developed to 80 pages that are now compiled in a handbook. We sectioned our topics. First, we have some general guidelines on how to act when you are facing with online abuse. This is the first chapter. And the first chapter contains information what is the start of the procedure at the social work center and in the police. This is an excellent tool for those who are not staff in these two organizations, but nonetheless are in contact with such minors in problems. So this is general information, but also an excellent set of instructions how you should have an interview at the social work center or in the police. The second chapter is dealing with individual cases of e-abuse and cyberbullying. The general idea is to have 3 sub-chapters. One is sexual violence. This is, of course, the most broad one. Then we have hateful content, trolling, hate speech, threats, and the like. And third, we have the abuse of privacy, for example, invading into profiles and similar instances. When you have individual cases, 18 altogether, in each case, we first present how to identify the case. If we're talking about fake profiles, how can you identify that a profile is fake? Moving on, we then talk about how to counsel a child who is a victim. Maybe something very bad happened to them. Maybe they are victims of of sexual abuse. How to counsel the child? What are the first instructions? Then you have information about the time of reporting. This is essential, as Mr. Tekavec highlighted. If you have a crime or suspicion of a crime, then you must report this. And this was included in the manual. Then how to counsel parents. perhaps it is not only the child that is in distress. You can also have parents who do not know how to help their child. So this was included as well. Moving on. When we are counseling children and minors, we're not only talking about what is the content of this counseling to the victim, but also to the perpetrator, because also the perpetrator can be talked to. And all these cases were concluded with a concrete example, a specific example. I have a handbook right here, and I have the invasion of privacy. Maybe here you have a case of fake profiles and the fake photograph, which was published on the school website. And this includes hateful content. The victim is very offended because the victim is targeted by his peers. And the handbook includes the appropriate action for a school worker. And it is very simply set out. We wanted to facilitate the work for the school worker and the user of the manual. And I would like to thank at this point the Social Work Center Association, because they were very helpful and they were the source of such cases. We reformed these cases, of course, and anonymized them. We adapted the cases so that they are representative. And to answer to the question, so who are the targeted users of the handbook? So the social work centers, police officers, and also all of those who are employed or part of staff in school, of the counseling services, teachers, because they are the ones who are faced with such problems, and they're often the first contact for the victim. So it is very important for them to have such information. And also the handbook is meant for all the NGOs and individuals who are dealing with the issue of e-abuse and cyberbullying. Thank you very much, Mr. Puschner. Your last statements were also corroborated by our participants. They say that the handbook is very useful also for their work in schools, because it contains the appropriate protocol for action when a child is a victim of abuse. So the handbook really is widely useful. And now I can see that Bojana Kračan is back. Can you hear me? Yes, I hope that you can hear me. Apologies, because my computer did not want to cooperate with me. Yeah, yes, these are the downsides of the technology. So I have a question for you as follows. I would like to know the following. What were the challenges for you when you were collaborating on this handbook? You were working on it together with other authors. When you were writing it, were you facing any particular dilemmas? Maybe when you were thinking about what to include in the handbook? I was invited to this project. First, I was thinking about, oh no, not again, not another handbook. And I was thinking that we have enough of those. But when we started the discussion and analyzed the content of the handbook, I changed my opinion. I think this is a wonderful handbook, and it is likable at a first glance. The greatest credit, of course, goes to Marko. I think it is very well structured and contains all the information on the one spot, in the one spot. when you have different profiles of people at one table, the discussion is very constructive. The police is a repressive authority, and they do not have a lot of room for maneuver. So the idea to have only one type response is not possible. In the area of cyberbullying or sexual abuse online, we're talking about different types of crime. We often need to know the entire case to see what is the crime at issue. So we cannot provide a single explanation for every single case. That is why the handbook includes the description of different types of crime. We also wanted to provide general explanations or orientations, and we also included the fact that the minor has criminal responsibility when they are 14 years of age. We also talked about the statute of limitation for criminal prosecution.
Thank
you very much, Mrs. Kračan, for your response. Let us now turn back to Mrs. Zemljič. I like the fact that the handbook also contains the general guidelines on how to act when facing child abuse online, because the explanation is very insightful about the rights of the victims, the procedure at the police and the social work center, the way the interviews are held with parents, victims, and juvenile offenders. I would like to know the following. What is the importance of the interview, of the management of the interview with victims and juvenile offenders so that the procedure is successful? Thank you for your question. Yes, the interview with all the stakeholders or participants is very important. Perhaps I would like to mention that the interview should be adapted to the person who reports about the abuse. Social work centers, for example, can hear about abuse when we are fulfilling our public tasks. For example, when we are dealing with juvenile offenders in court. If you have juvenile offenders in court and they were imposed educational measures, or within other tasks that we are carrying out in the form of assisting children and minors having difficulties. I'm talking about the educational problems of parents and other services of assistance carried out by the social work centers and that are meant for parents and families. When talking about interviews with a child, these interviews are of course different than the interviews carried out at the police. When talking about social work centers, we are aiming at counseling and therapeutic relationships. We have to show sympathy towards children. However, when talking about the police, they have to investigate or lead an interview in order to obtain evidence for the procedure. Based on our experience with children and minors and parents, I can say that the interviews are vital for us to obtain as much information as possible so that we can inform the children and the parents, that we calm them down and to show them what are the possible next steps. We have good experience, of course. At first, parents can be quite shocked, but it's easy to talk to them. They are prepared and ready to communicate with us. And once they are well informed about the types of assistance, also minors start responding and collaborating with us. As Mr. Tekavec also said, we have good connections to the police and good cooperation with them. In cases when you need to see whether an action is a crime or another form of violence, we confide in them, we collaborate with them to decide what are the next steps. Excellent. Thank you very much for your response. Mr. Tekavec, if we take a look at this problem from a wider perspective, we heard that during the pandemic, the children became even more vulnerable to abuse online. I think we can say that the perpetrators have had an easier access to children and minors. Do you maybe have information about which social medias are the most often used when talking about abuse?
Let me first just say a few more words about the manual. The police appreciates the collaboration with other associations and organizations, because the police is not the first in contact with the victims of such criminal offenses. And we need to fight online sexual abuse of children together as a society. For the police, it is important to know that the other association, the other organization conducts a proper, right procedure, and therefore we have welcomed this manual, this handbook, greatly. New trends that have been witnessed by the police, so preying on children on different social media, social networks, as was already mentioned in the introductory part. One of the speakers said that the directive on the electronic communications have helped us fighting the sexual exploitation of children. We are, of course, we have to rely on the internet providers that detect criminal activity on their platforms. Most reports come from social blackmailing, social online sexual abuse in Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, and Discord. Also networks such as Gmail, so networks for the exchange of information, exchange, and also Messenger. In terms of the age of children who are using Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, the youngest use TikTok mostly. TikTok also enables recordings, so the creation of their own videos via applications. and what social networks are used to distribute the images or videos of sexual abuse of children. Is Slovenia any different from other countries? And no, Slovenia is no different from any other countries. We are all part of this global environment, internet environment. We have we face the same challenges, same issues, and we use the same approaches to fight this challenge. The distribution is most common in the environment that is most safe for the perpetrators, where they are protected with their anonymity, the dark net, deciphered networks, and also ordinary channels, for example, emails. They also conduct the exchange through Messenger, Facebook, ordinary ways of communication, online communication. So through channels where only two people who communicate between each other are included in the communication. Thank you very much, Mr. Tekavec. Mr. Puschner, you constantly investigate the behavior of young people, children online, on the internet. Mr. Tekavec talked about that before. Have you noticed that some of the social networks, most popular among the young people, are less dangerous or less appropriate for commenting without registration, for the exchange of materials? Do you have any additional warnings at Safe.si? Actually, the main problem here is that such networks are being used by young people younger than 13 years of age. Most popular networks have the limitation of 13 years of age. Consequently, the youngest children fall into these traps, they face many problems because they lack knowledge. The protection of young people on the networks is very low. The main problems that we record are on Instagram, TikTok, Viber, as a communication application. A lot of information, a lot of content is shared in the hidden groups, in the private groups. Then Telegram, we found inappropriate content there. And we were informed by some schools about Telegram. Other than that, there are no deviations from what Mr. Tekavec already mentioned. Most popular social networks are, of course, the environment where most problems appear. We see a new network appearing every now and then. Saraha, for example, a few years ago, it was a social network for anonymous reviewing, and it is a potential environment for abuse, for cyber violence. When that happened, we detected primarily in primary schools that this news was spread, but then it kind of disappeared. This social network did not come to life. The important thing is to pay attention when a new social network appears, a new application, and if it is widely used by the young people, then of course these problems, online abuse, will quickly appear there too. The developers of the application believe that they are going to be able to prevent such problems, but very quickly the abuse happens on such networks, and then the developers cannot follow such events. And this has been the case in many countries, and also in the future I'm sure that this will happen again. It is very important, therefore, to raise awareness, to educate everybody in the community, teachers, social workers, and parents. I believe the parents should be the primary element, people who protect their children. Ms. Kračan, talking about raising awareness, education, do you believe that we have sufficient knowledge in Slovenia about the traps of young people? And what do you believe is the most important tool or piece of information we need to know to protect us against sexual exploitation online for all internet users? We have to know that most adults are use the internet safely, but the children were born into this world, and they do not have the knowledge, although their parents usually say, oh, my child knows more about the internet and computer than I do. The parents have the obligation to teach the children. And I cannot accept the idea that our children are the generation of genius who know everything about the computers and the internet. I have to apologize on behalf of the interpreters, but the sound of the presentation is extremely poor. We as parents have to follow the development of the applications that our children are using. We have to provide explanation. We have to know that our children are independent enough to use certain applications and certain programs and platforms. And also we need to accept the fact that sexual abuse is occurring in Slovenia too. We have to know that there are many adults who are preying on children online. It is very important to promote good communication at home. To teach children who they can accept as a friend, for example, via an application. Mostly the victims are children of dysfunctional families. They are most vulnerable. The Safe.si provides many information. The parents can use the website to educate themselves as well as their children. Thank you very much, Ms. Kračan. Let's go back to Ms. Zemljič. We mentioned concrete examples in the handbook of different types of online violence and online abuse. I would like to know do these examples come from concrete situation experience of social workers in Slovenia? Yes, correct. They are real, true examples that led us to connect with other organizations to prepare this handbook. They were practical examples the social work centers face on a daily basis in their work. What motivated us to prepare the manual was that our experts had a lack of information, knowledge, the way of conduct when facing online abuse, sexual abuse of children and young people. Therefore, this handbook is a great tool for our work in the social work centers. The examples come from our work when dealing with children, young people, families, and the handbook was created using concrete examples and how to proceed. It offers guidelines. What is the first contact? What is the second step? Information. Third step, offering assistance. Fourth step, in case of criminal offenses, go forward. The handbook is a framework. I have to stress that, and our response, the response of the police, depends on each individual case. Yes, so the handbook offers guidelines. Thank you very much, Ms. Zemljič. We all remember that children were forced to stay at home during the COVID-19 epidemic. For a long time, they spent their time at home alone without their parents. And maybe we had never imagined before that they will be forced to use online social networks for socializing because their physical contacts with their peers were prohibited. And the perpetrators of sexual abuse use that opportunity, and the demand of the materials, videos of sexual abuse increased, and the World Foundation, International Foundation, recorded a dramatic increase in such demand. The EU was placed on place number 1. Yes, as you mentioned, the internet, the darknet, is used to share such materials. And the demand is, of course, has increased. The demand for such content, that means more abused children. So this is a vicious circle, and such videos, the sharing of the videos is on the rise. The police, together with Spletno Oko and other organizations, when we detect such materials, we want to remove it as fast as we can. And if the materials is found on the servers in the developed countries, where we have established a collaboration within the fight against abuse of children, we can request the state to remove such content. But if the server is found in the country that does not have such collaboration, this is impossible, we could request for blocking of such materials, but in Slovenia, the legislation does not provide for such actions. So we have to act accordingly to each individual case. And the collaboration with international organizations, with other police authorities, help us do. So let me comment the annual report of Spletno oko for 2020. It has shown that the share of the materials with the youngest victims has increased in 2019. And the share in 2020 was higher for the age group 11 years of age and more. The videos are primarily consist of young girls, and a typical victim is typically a girl between 11 and 15 years of age, and the videos show severe abuse, sexual abuse. Do you have any comments regarding this trend, this changing trend? Of course, the epidemic was one of the factors, but it is not the only factor. Children, young people were present online before. What has changed is the access, the technology has changed, and the mentality of the children, of the parents, especially that children are owners of a smart device very soon. And as Marko Puschner said before, the problem is that children younger than 13 have unlimited access to social networks. They can just make their data up and use the networks. And also, the responsibility of the parents here is very important. The parents are those who can prevent that, who can talk to the children. The worst thing is, if we look at our reports, we see videos with children of 5, 6 years old. It is videos that were self-made. That means these children, these young children, have unlimited access to internet through their smart device, so they can record themselves and publish such content. This is a cruel reality we live in, and we are not entirely aware of the dangers of the internet. And as I mentioned in my lecture, it is not only about conducting a criminal offense, but it is the access of children to content that are truly not appropriate for their age. Yes, absolutely. We have so much work to do in this field. And if we go back to the manual now, concretely, how do you use the manual in your work? For example, the social workers within the centers, how does the manual help you? Many examples we see in the social work centers are examples of peer violence, bullying in school, young people skipping schools because of violent peers, because of bullying. For example, retouching of photographs, sharing such photographs through Viber groups, Snapchat, other social networks. recording pornographic material, sharing of such content in these aforementioned groups, blackmailing, laughing at such peers. These are the examples we have experienced, we have seen in our work. The manual is intended for experts, social workers, and the social workers have distributed the manual to schools, to the school directors, teachers, teachers in the kindergartens, and organizations they collaborate with. And in this way, we have raised awareness on this topic. We have developed a mutual collaboration of all institutions, and of course the responsibility of all of us to prevent such online abuse when detecting them. So it is a sort of linking element, right, between institutions. Yes, the experts who use this manual in their work were very happy. We have distributed the manual in all units of the social work centers in Slovenia, and since it is available online in an electronic form, this makes it so much more easier. The first responses were positive, especially the experts said that there are all information in one place, that there are organizations, contacts, the parents can contact to get help, and also young people and children. This is a very priceless element. Yes. Ms. Kračan, how can you, the police officers, criminal police, use the manual in your practice? So the manual is intended for social workers primarily, but also in the police, we printed out the manuals and we distributed the manual in all units, the police departments in Slovenia. It is a tool for the police officers in their work. They can use clarification, definitions in the manual. There are information how to collect evidence, for example, and how to determine a criminal offense. Of course, the police officers have to do their work in accordance with the applicable legislation, but the manual is a welcome tool. The responses from the field are positive. The manual is being used when they are preparing workshops for students of primary schools, high schools, parents. It is a comprehensive book, and this is a very positive element. So great feedback, Mr. Puschner. We all want to know, where can we find the manual, the handbook? So for those who do not have it in the physical form, our participants want to know whether the handbook will be available in English or any other language in the future, of course. As you probably heard from my colleagues, social work centers, we sent 2,400 issues, and the police received 1,200 issues of the handbook in the physical form, in the printed form. Of course, we wanted to send the handbooks to schools, the printed handbooks, but financially that was unfortunately not possible. We have received positive feedback from schools and other institutions, and if we will have funding available, we will distribute the printed copies to other organizations. But you can find the handbook on our website, Safe.si, in the section materials for parents and teachers. In terms of the translation of the handbook into English, unfortunately, the handbook is currently only available in Slovenian language. It was intended for the social work centers. It was adopted to Slovenian legislation, and direct translation into English has not been foreseen, since it would need to be adopted to the local environment and legislation. Of course, there are topics, psychological elements of the handbook that are common for every environment, universal, but some other parts of the manual of the content would have to be adopted and localized. If somebody wants to translate the manual, of course, this is possible. So if somebody has any interest into that, that is, of course, possible. Yes, we are ready to help you with adoptions of the handbook. But as you mentioned, yes, it is linked to Slovenian legislation. And because of that, the adaptation of the handbook would be necessary for other countries. So we have run out of time. We have time limitations here. I would like to recommend the use of the handbook for everybody who is dealing with practices of online abuse, sexual abuse online, cyberbullying. The handbook contains a lot of information, instructions that are beneficial in the practical work, everyday work, also concrete contacts on the national level as well as regionally. A lot of information are there that can help experts in their daily activities in the field of online abuse. I would like to thank the four speakers, first of all, for your work. It was a tremendous work, and also for the presence here at our conference. We hope that similar educational content, seminars, handbooks will be continued in the future, that we'll be able to collaborate in the future. Thank you very much.